Hello and welcome to another video review. This is Retro City Rampage for PC, Xbox 360, PS3, PS Vita, Wii, and 3DS. This review is coming to you courtesy of Fusion Bunny. He sent me this, so thank you, it is greatly appreciated. This is a top-down action game by V-Blank Entertainment that was first released for PS3 and PC in October of 2012, and it saw release on other systems later on. And it's kind of interesting because it's styled after the old-school GTA games, specifically GTA 1 and 2, obviously. And it's done in a very NES style of visuals, and there's all sorts of references to various things thrown in there as well. But the question really becomes, did they pull this thing off? Is it really fun to play, and on top of that, is it a good retro throwback? Well, obviously they really nailed the aesthetic for this particular thing. They were going for the old school NES era of visuals and sound design, and like I said, they absolutely nailed it. Everything is pixel art, everything looks about like you would expect from the NES era, and it looks pretty good actually, despite the fact that there's a limited color palette and all that sort of thing. There aren't all that many animations, but again, it's trying to be retro style, and they pulled it off brilliantly. That said, the only thing that really stands out to me about the presentation is the music. Because obviously with it being retro style, there's not really too much to say about it other than, oh, they did a great job with it. Because that doesn't really mean anything. Sure, it's old school style, but a lot of games are like that these days. And retro visuals are really nothing to write home about. But in this particular case, the music is really well done. It's very catchy, it fits brilliantly, and it sticks with you. It's pretty simplistic, but it sticks with you, and it's really fun. Other than that, though, there's really nothing to speak of as far as the presentation, other than they just did a really good job with it. They nailed what they were going for, and that's pretty much all they meant to do with it. But obviously what really matter are the story and the gameplay, and the story in this is completely ridiculous. You play as a guy named Player. No, really, that's his name. The Player. At any rate, he's a thug for hire, and in the city of Theftropolis, he ends up encountering a time-traveling phone booth, and ends up being sent forward in time to the year 20XX, because future. At any rate, the booth ends up breaking, and this guy named Doc Chalk, which is most obviously a parody of Dr. Brown from Back to the Future. If you don't get that, then that's pretty sad. But anyway, he arrives and rescues you, but he thinks you're a hero as opposed to what you actually are. And so you have to work with this guy to get the parts that you need to repair the booth, and that's kind of it, really. Along the way, you'll run into various wacky characters who are all parodies of various characters from various 80s action movies and things like that, on top of being parodies of various people in general. There's things like a parody of Bruce Campbell, for instance, and such like that. And that's pretty much what you can expect from the game. You're just going from mission to mission, completing these objectives, and along the way you're running into these pop culture references, and that's kind of it, actually. So there's a problem with that. References are not in themselves funny. The game seems to think they're hilarious. Well, they might elicit a chuckle, but they're really not that funny. Just running into Bruce Campbell, for instance, is not really that funny, because he's just kind of there. Okay. And then he gives you basically a Tanuki suit. It's like, okay, whatever. And everything in this game seems contrived to just throw in a new gameplay bit, and it frankly ends up being kind of boring. The references end up not being funny, they end up being kind of annoying after a while. Because again, references in themselves are not funny. You have to have proper delivery, and this thing didn't do the proper delivery. So what comedy is in there is extremely minimal. It's basically limited to pop culture references, and that's about it. It's not very funny, even though the game seems to think it is funny. And so you find yourself rolling your eyes at it more often than not, and just going, really? They went there? Jeez. So, right off the bat, one of the things that they're trying to go for with charm is just not working. It's not funny. It just has a bunch of pop culture references in it. Woo! So what about the gameplay? Is that what holds this thing together? Well, here's the problem with playing a game like an old school GTA clone. It's an old school GTA clone. There's really not much to it. You just run around and do stuff. And by do stuff, I mean if it moves, you end up annihilating it. That's pretty much all that the old school GTA games were. At least as far as I remember. So, when you get to a game like Retro City Rampage, and that's pretty much all you're doing, it wears off very, very quickly. There's a bunch of mini-games, and you're going to see some of those in this video. But that's the problem. They're all mini-games, and they're all pretty much the same exact thing, only with a slight spin on it. So instead of just, say, running around doing as much damage as possible, now you have to run around and you happen to be on fire this time, and you just run into things and set them on fire. Or you might have to rack up a certain number of stomps or things like that, and it's all very contrived. It wears off very quickly, and the game quickly becomes very, very boring. It's extremely repetitive, and it doesn't help that the game was pretty much made to be a twin-stick shooter. So when you're playing it on a keyboard and mouse, it ends up not feeling all that good, because the controls are a bit spotty, and it just takes some getting used to. You can lock on to enemies, but that's about it, really. And sometimes things are a bit dodgy. You don't necessarily hit things when you're supposed to hit them, and that gets kind of annoying. The movement is about what you would expect from a NES-style game, and so you find out pretty quickly that the game is just a one-trick pony. It's entirely there to be retro-styled and have a bunch of pop culture references in it. It's really not thrown out there to really capitalize on being a great game, which is unfortunate, because it very well could have been. It very well could have been absolutely hilarious if they knew what they were doing. It very well could have been an absolute blast to play, but it's not. If you want to do something zany and open world, then why not boot up Saints Row? Because that's actually funny, and this isn't. And all this has going for it is that it's retro styled. I mean, obviously that music is just a blast to listen to, and the styling they absolutely nailed, but retro styling alone and pop culture references mixed in there don't do enough to make this game enjoyable. You might go, I get what they're going for, fairly early on, and then it wears off very quickly, and once you've played it for about half an hour at most, really, it wears off very quickly and quickly becomes boring. And so, as a result, I have a really, really hard time recommending this game. It just wears thin so quickly, and it's a shame, too, because they could have done a lot with it, and they just kinda didn't. They instead decided, hey, pop culture references, go! And didn't really work on actually making their game anything other than a series of mini-games just slapped together. It's contrived, it's very repetitive, it wears off very quickly, and it's boring. And ultimately, I give it a 2 out of 5. Thanks for watching.